So Bob is asking, so when are you going to sell the Lixie test jig?
We've actually had a few people ask if it's open source.
Ah,
And
yeah.
so, which I mean,
It can be.
It
I just
can
haven't
be,
done that
but
yet.
we don't really find. We don't know
I have
why.
no reservations. Yeah.
Yeah, because
so
like it only works if you're gonna test what you already have, and hopefully, I mean, we tested them already, so hopefully they all work.
yeah.
You know.
But yeah,
Yeah.
the design itself or the firmware that's running the LED checks and that voltage drop thing, that's definitely something I should generalize and release soon.
I was going to say, I think that is definitely the thing of interest, because there are a lot of different people doing different things with addressable LEDs, and I think that it would be very interesting to other makers who are doing, addressable LED art type of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
We have a recommendation to make some money first before making it open source.
Yeah. Well, open source is just an interesting thing because who was the guy who said it best about?
Oh, Nathan Seidel, co-founder of SparkFun.
Mhm.
He has a TED Talk online, if you guys haven't seen it, anyone watching, where he discusses the pros and cons of open source.
Yeah.
And it turns out by the end of it, there's no real cons. Not really.
Yeah.
Because the obvious ones you would throw up, if someone doesn't understand the open source hardware community, they'd be like, wait a minute. Why? That's like the opposite of a patent. Don't you want a patent? Right. So, not necessarily, actually, because there's a lot of creative thinkers out there and people willing to share their work, and people that can take your work and make it into something you never even thought it could do. Mm-hmm. And even if you have a patent, you're going to get cloned anyways.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. So just make it better for the customer. Because I've had stuff before, like that little vector robot that rolls around.
Yeah.
That company went defunct. And now I can't do anything until makers go through and figure out how to dump the ROM contents on all the little chips and decrypt it. And it's a pain in the butt. Whereas if it had like an open source or a SDK that stuck around, I would still be able to use it as a customer. So I would have only benefited if they made it open source.
Yeah. It is a hard and a scary thing to contemplate too, and I think it depends upon your product a little bit, but definitely I would say that especially for things that are like geared towards learning and are platforms that you can build other things upon, open source is definitely the way to go. Yeah.
So I didn't go to school for computer science or anything. I went for graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this computer science or programming Arduinos or writing assembly code, it's just because there was thousands of open source things out there that I could dig into. I could break one thing and say, okay, so I now know that function was called from this one, and I go find it. And, it's a good exercise just to go pick a simple Arduino library and just read it. Just go look at all of it. See how they did it. How the class constructors worked, or how verbose they are with how many functions they make you do or don't make you do. Yep. Because one of the things I pride myself on with the Pixie Chroma displays is the library is no more complicated than you need it to be. So if you just needed to show text, it's like 3 lines. But if you wanted it to have like an interrupt service routine that keeps some animation going inside of the text or something complex like that, you can also do that. But you don't have to know how to do complex stuff to do the basic thing.
Right.
I think if you can make a product with an Arduino library, especially, that is perfectly suited for whoever picks it up. So if it's brand new, like it's your day one working with Arduinos and wires and stuff, you should be able to hook it up with really good comments in the code of how to do so. And if you are super advanced with it, you should be able to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be bored of it too fast.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. No, I think you've definitely definitely nailed it. And yeah, just definitely reading through other people's libraries has helped me a lot. Yeah, Adafruit's stuff is really great in that regard. And yeah, I definitely learned about driving graphic LCDs through their open source graphic LCD driver.
Library, yeah.
Yep. Yep, that was really useful. So let's see. Yep, Bob says he thinks about how to test hardware and code before he actually creates any portions. So he's all on testing from the beginning. And yeah, Tom also echoes that open source is the way. This is the way. Cool. And you're actually OSHWA certified too, with the Pixie.
We are,
Pixie promos? Yeah. Nice. How
Yeah,
was that
fine.
process? Did you have to do a lot of extra work, or were you pretty much like, well, we already made all of our documentation open source and had it online, so it was pretty easy to do?
It's actually not too bad. So for anyone who's out of the loop, if you want to get a little mark like this on your PC or an ID that goes with it. So like the original Lixie was US 54. I was really early on that one.
Nice.
And then the Pixie Chroma is US 2058. All you need to do is make sure that like your Arduino code's on GitHub or GitLab or whatever, Gitbucket alternative, and try to make sure that any hardware files are in an accessible format. So not everyone has, Autodesk Inventor or even uses that anymore. Yeah. So it counts as open source hardware, but it's not a preferred way to do it if you have a proprietary file format. So technically, I use Eagle for my PCBs, and the PCBs are all small enough that the free version of Eagle can still work with them.
Right.
But if I had a bigger one, I would probably want to do something like KiCad that anyone can open up. It's like Adobe Illustrator versus Inkscape. Yeah. If you can give out Inkscape files, that's better for everyone. So OSHWA, the Open Source Hardware Association, are in charge of verifying basically your integrity with how open source you are, and make sure you've got that whole checklist. There's nothing really missing there. And once they've signed off on that, you get a permanent ID that you can put on the boards. And then in the future, what's really cool about having that ID on there is if somebody just completely lost the documentation or like how to get to it, if they type in that ID number, it'll show up on the OSHWA site, and you can get to all of the stuff that was submitted to have it qualified as open source hardware.
Cool. Very cool.